Slap! They all heard a strange sound. Everyone was surprised to see what caused it. Hanyu just slapped Rika in the face. Oh, she's angry.
聞きなさい。羽生。私たちは共にあまたの世界を渡り、人の身では知り得ないことをいくつも知ってきました。ある時はあなたが教えられ、いくつもの大切なことを学び、ようやくこの世界で最も大切なことを学び取りました。私たちが求めてやまず、そしてようやく得たもの、それが何かわかりますか？
It was how to make a miracle happen. A miracle is like a number you get on a die. People think that the result of the roll depends on God's mood. God holds the key to miracles. Humans don't have the right to control them. But although humans don't have the right, they can perceive. They can perceive how to improve their odds, and how they can make a miracle happen.
奇跡の起こし方。リカ、あなたはもう知っているはずです。私よりも先に知ったはずです。あなたが本当に大事にしたいこの最後の世界で。
Rika's mouth hung open. That's right, she thought. I'd forgotten again how to make a miracle happen.
みんなは逃げてください。
Rika stood up. Everyone was surprised to hear what she said.
入江、みんなを頼みますです。高野は入江も僕も殺すでしょうが、僕の殺し方には高野なりのこだわりがあるはずなのです。だから多分しばらくは殺されないでしょう。
冗談じゃねえ。でも必ず殺されるってことじゃねえか。
僕が出て行かなければ今すぐシーたちは殺されます。なら僕が捕まっても、僕が殺されるまでの時間はきっと反撃のチャンスにもなりますです。リカちゃん、考えてみたらとっても簡単なことだったのです。
If she spoke, are the words supposed to be black? I don't know. Rika stepped out of the horizontal tunnel and reached the ladder. The beam of light shone down upon her. I would assume that it's supposed to be black, but then again, we've had some weird little visual bugs here and there. In this dark world, her figure seemed almost holy, like someone receiving a divine revelation.
だって僕たちは絶対に勝てるってみんな信じてるから。僕もみんなも、そして神様までも信じてるから。ニパー。
Rika's smile told them that she trusted them 100%. She believed someone would come rescue her before she got killed. That was why she didn't mind letting the enemy capture her. If it would save Shion and Kesai's lives, then it was nothing.
今上がります。シーを引っ込めるのですよ。
The mountain dogs pulled Shion's body away from the edge of the well.
僕の仲間に指一本触れてみろ。舌を噛んで死んでやりますです。高野は自分の手で僕を殺したがってますから、お前たちは困ったことになりますですよ。
わかった。上がってこい。
僕の仲間をこのまま見逃すのです。どうせお前たちの計画で。
その条件は飲めない。命は保証するが拘束する。
じゃあお気の毒さようなら。舌を噛むよりここで手を離した方が早いわね。この底は深いわよ。私の死体が出てこないと、それもまたお前たちが計画に困るんじゃない？
As long as they captured Rika, the mountain dogs really didn't care about the others. They were ready to kill the rest if they resisted once they had Rika. That's why they wouldn't agree to Rika's request. They started to think that maybe they should just lie to Rika. But that was when they heard something. Hanyu started to speak in a clear voice. It was a voice with a very mysterious tone. It sounded like it was coming from below the surface of the earth, but it also sounded like it was coming from heaven. Hanyu spoke.
この私が取引に応じると言っている。ぐずぐず言わずに言う通りにせよ、ゲロ。フルでリカは上がる。それに対し、求めた小さな約束を履行せよ。天は自ら与えるものに与えることはない。人の身に過ぎた考えは不良。身に過ぎた偽りの罪に身の程を知れ。
That's kind of weird. I don't know what she's saying. Nightingale 1, the member who had been demanding their surrender, was suddenly overcome by a strange sensation. He had been in such an advantageous position, but somehow it didn't seem that way anymore. In that girl's voice, there was something strange about it. That voice belonged to something both holy and sacred. He instinctively sensed it. Humans can only negotiate with other humans. It's impossible to negotiate with a being greater than all humans.
待て、隊長に相談する。そのままで待て。ウグイスワンより大鳥ワン。
He'd been very threatening until just a minute previous, but he had grown completely perplexed. Everyone was stunned by Rika and Hanyu's mysterious auras.
必ずすぐ助け出すからね。
Rina muttered as she tried to hold back her tears.
貴様らの条件を飲もう。この場は見逃す。フルでリカは上がれ。高野三叉がお前に用があると言っている。
I'm sure she does.
では行ってきますですよ。ニパー。
探しましたんだ、リカさん。
I wonder if this is the final section of the game, because this one is being particularly long. Luckily, I actually do have time today, but I didn't expect a nearly 3-hour section so far.
あなたは大事な身なんですから、急に姿を消されちゃたまりませんね。こいつはルール違反です。では、リカさんは診療所に来てもらいましょう。お前たちは行け。
The assault unit that led Rika away headed back into the basement. They were about to break the rules too.
約束を破る気ね。
約束？そりゃ何の話ですんね。おほった。つったら本当に舌を噛まれちゃかないませんわ。おい。
As Rika tried to run, Okonogi grabbed her fragile arm. She fought back, but her resistance meant nothing against him. One of the mountain dogs took out a syringe from a case. It shouldn't kill her, but it would probably put Rika to sleep. Takano, after all, didn't need a chatty Rika. She just needed a live queen carrier. If Rika got that shot, that will mean the end of this world. Before Rika could scream, the other dog covered her mouth. The dog with the syringe drew closer to Rika's arm. Rika was being grabbed from behind and her mouth was covered. There was no way for her to fight. I believe. Even if I'm asleep, I believe. Rika kept repeating that in her mind. She believed that someone would wake her up, and that the first thing she'd see when she opened her eyes would be her beloved friends. It happened all of a sudden. Akasaka, finally. The man with the syringe spun twice in the air and dropped to the ground. Nobody, including Okonogi, could understand this sudden phenomenon. It defied the very laws of physics. Rika couldn't understand either. The man who was holding Rika from behind spoke up.
間に合った。
Ah, thank you. You were supposed to be here earlier, but I guess I'll take this. His voice had such a heavy feeling imbued in it.
数えきれない世界で後悔した。いつも気づく時には手遅れだった。
お前、誰だ?
The others took a few steps back, away from Rika and the man holding her. There are many units within the Mountain Dogs, so often its members don't remember each other's faces. There were just too many units, so nobody really paid attention. All of the Mountain Dogs were more or less well built. But this man had an excellent physique. Even Okonogi noticed that he'd never seen anyone like that in one of his units before. Rather, he actually wanted to recruit him. But...
私がずっと一番。リカちゃん、君を助けに来た。
The hands that were holding Rika left her shoulders. They left ever so gently.
やろう!
And as soon as they did, they transformed into a pair of furious fists which implanted themselves in the faces of the men, attacking him from behind. They flew through the air. Akasaka hit those two without even turning around. 5 members of the Mountain Dogs surrounded Akasaka. However, he didn't even see them. He could only feel the deep emotion of finally being able to do what he'd been longing to. And the 5 of them sensed it. That maybe, just maybe, he didn't even care that they were there.
何をぼさっとしてる? 制圧しろ!
On Okonogi's signal, the 5 Mountain Dogs bore down on Akasaka.
リカちゃんは伏せて。
Rika dropped to the ground, and Akasaka was left standing. And then he always looks really cool for his portrait. Akasaka, who came back to keep a promise he made with a girl 5 years ago. But his promise was worth more than 5 years. Rika knew that. Akasaka probably understood it too. The promise went back 100 years. For 100 years, he regretted not being able to save her from the conspiracy. He believed that one day there would be a miracle, and he could travel back to this day. That was why he continued to train himself. His strong will and Rika's wish made that miracle happen. That one and only miracle allowed Akasaka to be here in Hinamizawa in June 1983. The first one went down in the time it took Okonogi to blink. Lowering himself to grapple Akasaka had proven fatal. He wasn't so soft as to let such perfect openings go by. Akasaka's hand smashed into the back of the man's head. His blow was powerful enough to smash a pillar of ice or shatter a mountain of tiles. As it happened, Akasaka was holding back a little so that his target wasn't too injured.
その手加減を赤坂は初段からやめる。だから
Who is this?
一撃で撃沈する。微塵ほども容赦なく。
who is this person? Akasaka's well-trained fist continued to knock down the Mountain Dogs, 1 member for every time Okonogi blinked. 1 hit per opponent was all Akasaka needed. This was the true essence of karate. Akasaka's colleagues praised and feared his power.
その威力はまさに鉄鋼弾。
Weapons were useless against him. I don't know, has anyone tried like a gun? No matter how hard his victim tried to protect himself, it meant nothing to Akasaka. But he was too strong for the Mountain Dogs to even understand that. It was as if he was a giant they had to crane their necks up to see. Akasaka didn't even give them time to think. Someone from the Mountain Dogs must have called for backup. About a dozen more members had arrived.
大丈夫だリカちゃん私がここにいる限り君には指一本触れさ
みー、僕はお絵かきして待ってますです。
As Rika stayed low to the ground, she picked up a stick and started to carve into the dirt. That made Okonogi even angrier, but he calmed himself down. Then, the warrior's intuition resting in Okonogi's blood came to a realization. Numbers didn't matter. Even the full force of the Mountain Dogs wouldn't be able to defeat this monster. All the combat units were still down in the basement. There was no way they could take him.
ってことはよ、戦闘職の俺しか勝負にならねえってことじゃねえか。それにお前の顔、こいつは懐かしい顔だ。たくましくなったじゃねえか。
貴様まさか
My brother! Or something.
標準語じゃ思い出せねえか。なら訛りで話してやるぜ。すったら懐かしか。あん時の青二歳がよくもここまで立派になったもんよ。
It had been 5 years. This was the man Akasaka fought while he was investigating the kidnapping of the minister's grandson. Akasaka had still been inexperienced then.
あん時は手加減せん指示だった。だがな、今日はそういうわけにはいかんね。あの樽男も助けに来ねえぞ。しかしこの5年でだいぶ鍛えよったんだ。俺は嬉しいんで、俺はこういうのを期待しとった。このお前ら手を出すな。俺の獲物だ。
Typical bad guy. Don't anyone else assist me. I'm gonna deal with this myself personally. And then he gets his butt kicked. Okonogi took off all of his equipment and threw it on the ground. He loosened one button and then positioned himself. Seeing that, Akasaka realized he was somewhat capable and narrowed his eyes in vigilance. Okonogi took that as an insult. That Akasaka only thought he was somewhat capable. His behavior was telling Okonogi that he viewed him on the same level as the other small fry. Ah, there we go. Now he's in fighting position. Akasaka first moved to take up his stance and avoid getting Rika involved. Akasaka hadn't even moved one bit until just then. Okonogi could easily see that Akasaka was extremely strong. But at the same time, he thought he would be fairly simple to take down. Karate being a martial art, but nowadays it was just a sport. The army combat Okonogi trained in was completely different. Obviously, Akasaka had studied a lot, but it's all just child's play. All he learned were routine moves and forms. Besides, karate moves are fairly straightforward. Okonogi was confident that he could fight any karate pro and win. Okonogi started leaning onto his toes and using his meticulous footwork. In contrast, Akasaka still hadn't moved from his back stance. Akasaka was acting as if Okonogi's footwork was simply a trick, which infuriated Okonogi. Okonogi moved fiercely and nimbly in a manner completely different from how Akasaka was moving earlier. Akasaka remained calm, but Okonogi saw it differently. He can't react to my movements, so he's prepared to take damage in order to deal more. Akasaka couldn't defend himself from Okonogi's quick jab, and it connected with his face. It was a quick but light attack. Its purpose was to distract Akasaka and create an opening for Okonogi. Okonogi knew that Akasaka would use his arms to guard his face instinctively. Okonogi's real purpose was to attack his abdomen, which would then be unguarded. Of course, Akasaka didn't have enough time to guard himself. It took more than just good kinetic vision to prevent his attack. Only Okonogi, who trained for many years, had perfected the speed of that technique. Normal people would struggle helplessly while vomiting if they were to experience Okonogi's kick. It could even rupture internal organs. So it was pretty amazing that Akasaka was still on his feet.
どうした空手や。相手も同じ流派じゃないと戦えないってのか。
カル。
何？
Akasaka mumbled something, but Okonogi couldn't hear. Actually, he did hear it, but Okonogi never imagined he could say such a thing in this situation, so he couldn't hear it. He couldn't comprehend it.
軽い。
なんだと。
貴様の一撃は相手を打ち倒すことしか考えていない。だから重さが宿らない。
は？何をバカなこと言ってやがる。
空手は心を養う。人を打つということは自らも打たれることを知るということだ。自らの一撃が相手に何を及ぼすか。人は打つ意味と打たれる意味を知るのだ。だからそれに至らない貴様の一撃には重みが宿らない。
それは俺が未熟だということか。
Okonogi attacked Akasaka again, but this time Akasaka was different. Akasaka blocked Okonogi's fists and legs. Of course, Okonogi was still the only one attacking, but Akasaka had started to become much more aggressive. Now, as Okonogi attacked, his hands and legs were being injured. Okonogi instinctively sensed that he was in trouble. He thought Akasaka was just a police officer, but his movements were too dangerous. He was merciless, he was dangerous. So Akasaka's training and experience must far surpass Okonogi's. Wait, that dynamic heel kick isn't karate, is it? Akasaka's heel kick missed Okonogi's head by a millimeter.
てめえ、空手以外にもやってやがるな。
いいや、私は空手しかやっていない。
嘘。さっきから明らかに空手じゃ見たことねえ技が目立つぞ。
Okonogi was starting to become impatient. The reason Okonogi ridiculed martial arts as sports was because they were all hard-headed and only used set moves. This is how you strike in karate. This is how you punch in boxing. This is how you throw in judo. It's easy to learn, and that's why it's easy to win. But Akasaka was different. He said that he only did karate, and he must have spent unthinkable hours training. Yet he was flexible enough not to be confined only by formatted moves. That was understanding at a spiritual level. The spirit of martial arts isn't just forms. One simply learns forms to reach that spiritual level. Therefore, for one who has reached it, there are no forms. What Akasaka had was a philosophical spirit.
貴様の未熟さには落胆した。
Akasaka stepped away from his original spot for the first time. He moved forward. He filled the space between Okonogi and himself with his inescapable conviction. As Akasaka walked closer to Okonogi, Akasaka's assault radius tried to swallow him whole. To be within that radius meant death. Okonogi walked backwards to avoid being in that radius. That was as the result of his clear-headed judgment. Not because he was scared.
人を打つ意味のわからない貴様に本当の重さというものを教えてやる。
As Okonogi moved backwards, his back hit the van he came in earlier. He was cornered. Having your back to a wall didn't mean you were at a disadvantage, but the more it was pressed against that wall, the further a disadvantage it became. If Okonogi let Akasaka come any closer, Okonogi wouldn't even be able to take a combat stance. Okonogi decided it immediately. The last chance he had was the moment before Akasaka took his next step. Akasaka's foot left the ground. He was taking another step. To heal? No tricks, no feints. Okonogi lowered himself and attacked with everything he had. Boss, you look like you're getting your butt kicked over there. Would you like us to come and assist? The attack was powerful enough to break Akasaka's ribcage and rupture his heart. I'm a professional, Okonogi told himself. I can't be defeated by this amateur.
俺が山犬のオコノギだ。
そりゃよかったな。給料いくらだ？
At that moment, Akasaka's eyes opened wide. Wow, whoa. All the mountain dogs heard a noise. It wasn't the noise of people fighting. It was the noise of a traffic accident. Okonogi's blow missed by a slight amount, and Akasaka's fist struck inches away from Okonogi's face. There was a dent in the sliding door of the van. The windows on both sides had shattered, and it looked like the van was in an accident. Was it even possible for a human fist to do this? Time resumed its flow, and Okonogi knelt down, falling to the ground. Akasaka didn't miss on purpose. Akasaka couldn't control his fist because he put everything into one blow. Okonogi should thank Akasaka. If Akasaka had been able to control his attack better, Okonogi's face would have ended up like the van. However, although it didn't hit Okonogi's face, it shattered his spirit.
Akasaka! Pachi 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 pachi!
Rika applauded. But in this situation, it didn't sound like an applause. It almost sounded like Akasaka's fighting spirit was popping like firecrackers. Akasaka pulled back his fist, turned around calmly, and then spoke.
次だ。面倒だから一度に来い。
They knew. Everyone knew that there was no way to defeat Akasaka with their bare hands. Get the guns! They realized they needed weapons. They also needed more people. There should be a better equipped unit in the basement. All of a sudden, things began to move quickly. The remaining mountain dogs emerged from the basement.
地上での発砲は許可されていない。繰り返す。地上での発砲は不可。大鳥1、R を回収して退却許可を。
The mountain dogs who just witnessed Akasaka's battle against Okonogi realized it was time for them to run. They didn't even care about Rika. Who would even think of taking Rika from him after seeing what Akasaka was capable of doing? When Okonogi regained his awareness, he jumped into a van with the mountain dogs as it drove away. Since Okonogi took off his intercom device to fight with Akasaka, he had no idea what had transpired in the basement. After the mountain dogs broke their promise with Rika, they were supposed to round up the remaining club members. But when Akasaka showed up, the dogs had to be divided into a ground force and a basement force, which altered the situation. Kasai had gone on a counterattack, and the other club members somehow climbed up from the well and helped him. Since the mountain dogs weren't allowed to fire on the surface, they realized it would make the situation worse if Kasai fired his guns once he came up after them. Okonogi was unreachable, so Nightingale wanted order to retreat in his place. Who would bear the responsibility for this? It was probably Okonogi's fault for taking off his intercom device to fight against Akasaka, as he basically abandoned his job as a commander. But everything happened in the first place because Akasaka showed up. So maybe it was his triumph, rather than Okonogi's blunder. Either way, everything was miraculous. But the mountain dogs hadn't run with their tails between their legs. They had simply retreated for the moment. When they returned, they would have enough men and enough arms, ready to kill all who stand in their way. And that would happen very soon. There was no time to waste.
いいか、無事でよかったのです。なんとかね。奇跡のおかげで。奇跡じゃありませんです。 みんなで力を合わせたから、その中の一人の赤坂が助けに来てくれただけのことなのですよ。ああ。
そうね。この程度で奇跡じゃもったいないわね。
さあ、今度はこっちが打って出る番なのです。
So this definitely feels like the final section, or at least like the big major section. And I'm gonna be honest, like, while I could do more, this has been, it's about 3 hours of recording and over 3 hours for me. It's like 3.5, almost 4 hours for me. So I'm gonna take a break here and come back to this another day, probably, or whenever I have some more time. I think I'm gonna wait to release it all at the same time. Yeah, because I think this plays out well as a whole scene, so to speak, but it's definitely a long one. So yeah, I will come back just in a bit for you guys, but it'll be at least a day for me IRL. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you next time for some more Higurashi. Bye!